Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Midwest bracket breakdown here for March Madness. Cade Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs. Folks, as always, if you could leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. We sincerely appreciate it here at the Guys Who Stare at Stats. And as always, if you want to join along here in the bracket challenge, you can fill a bracket out yourself. We'll have the link to get that done in the description below. But Tyler, we've already broken down half of the bracket here on our road to the Final Four of our minds, I guess you could say, as we make our way to the Midwest side, starting with the 116 matchup, Houston taking on Northern Kentucky, the Norse. How can you not like a team called the Norse?
Right.
And unfortunately for the Norse, the champions of the Horizon, fun league to watch as always. Houston's going to win this game.
Yeah, Houston could be without their top three scorers and their JV guys or bench guys. Probably better than what the Norse have to offer. Cougs roll in this one.
And that sets up the 8-9 matchup of Iowa and Auburn. And this is a game that, to me, feels really similar to Maryland-West Virginia. We have an Iowa team that's a bit more consistent slightly than Auburn, I would say. Auburn's the more wild card team. We know how Bruce Pearl can coach in March. We've seen Auburn teams do well. We've seen them fall completely flat on their face, and the same thing for Iowa as well with Fran McCaffrey teams. There's always the joke of Iowa falling immediately once March starts, and these two playing together kind of sets up well, I would say, for both sides.
Yeah, I'd say if I had to poll both coaches, let's say, they'd both be feeling pretty good about coming into this game, right? Saying, hey, we got a chance to win. I think at the end of the day, similar to that Maryland-West Virginia matchup we talked about, the offense carries. And would you know it, Cade? According to Kim Palm, third most efficient offense in the country goes to the Iowa Hawkeyes this year. So I think at the end of the day, Iowa goes a little crazy, makes a couple shots, and takes that win over Auburn. And, at least gets themselves a first-round win in the tournament this year.
And see, I kind of differ. I go with the more unpredictable team wins. West Virginia, to me, is more unpredictable than Maryland. Auburn is more unpredictable than Iowa. I think Iowa's offense falls flat here in the first round, and I have Auburn moving on to play Houston in that second round.
The stats do say Auburn's a more well-rounded team, so I can't fully blame you. I just feel the Hawkeyes are going to catch fire in that game. We'll see, though.
We will see, and that brings us to our next one here, another 5-12. Miami taking on Drake. Miami, the number one seed in the ACC. They were the regular season champions. Drake in the Missouri Valley. It's weird to think of the Missouri Valley, and I know I've talked about it with you, not on the show. Seeing Murray State and Belmont there this year.
I know.
It's weird. It's in the Missouri Valley we grew up with of Wichita State and Creighton.
Back in my day.
Back in my day, a whole 10 years ago when I was a 10-year-old lad. Just completely different, but still fun nonetheless. Drake winning Arch Madness, getting to take on the Canes.
And can I say, excellent marketing on Arch Madness. What a perfect name for a conference tournament. Other conferences do better because you got to beat that's gold standard. With that all said, Cade, similar to the San Diego State-Charleston matchup, Drake's a trendy upset pick here as a 12-5 matchup. I'm sticking with the U, though. I think Miami's quietly a pretty solid team, at least good enough to beat Drake. Drake's had a great season and has gotten some buzz, but I feel like Miami's almost kind of gone underrated, which is weird to say.
They are, and there's one problem I have with Miami, and that's their defense at times. And I think Drake is going to be a solid team. They're going to play a more consistent game. And this is my 12-5 upset. Not Charleston, not Oral Roberts, but Drake upsetting Miami. That is my 12-5 pick this year.
And while, Drake does have a better defense than the U, I'll give you that. Offensively, they're actually kind of pedestrian. I mean, they are just not quite up to snuff. And Miami quietly has the 12th best offense, according to Kim Palm. As I told you at the top, I am very much in favor of the better offenses kind of traveling these first-round matchups. So that's just where we differ.
Yeah, already kind of a weirder bracket where we differed a bit. This one we'll have to see, though. Indiana taking on Kent State, the 4-13 game. The Golden Flashes taking on the Hoosiers. Indiana, a bit of a resurgence this year, trying to get back to where we all know Indiana has been. And they've had a lot of fun this season. I mean, everyone's going to look at the big win they got over Purdue at home, and Kent State quietly just keeping themselves in the conversation there, winning the MAC. They're a team that you have to keep an eye on.
And it should be a good test for Indiana. I mean, this is, as you're mentioning, a Kent State team that I think throughout has been solid throughout the season, has done well to essentially do what they needed to do, right? You go, you compete in the MAC, you take that. Probably got, as we've discussed with some of these teams, maybe deserved a little bit better seed and didn't get it, so you deal with this first-round matchup. And it's funny you mentioned that win for Indiana against Purdue. You know what that kind of exposed people to, and I think they might see more of it in this tournament. They might realize why Indiana was able to beat Purdue. There's bands they have on that team, Mr. Tracy Jackson Davis for Indiana. Folks, mind you, this guy's a forward, 20 points a game score, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. He's their leading assister as a forward. Top of that, he shoots 57% from the field. I think he's the X factor in this game. Everything on paper probably actually says Kent State is a viable upset candidate here in terms of getting the win over Indiana. I think Indiana goes overlooked. They wind up winning this game, and Mr. Jackson Davis is a big reason.
I agree. It's one of those that Kent State, defensively, they're a great team. Their only problem is they have trouble in the paint at times. And that's, like you just mentioned, where Indiana can thrive. I think the Hoosiers get the win there. Okay. Set up a game with Drake. You have them going up against Miami.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to see how this plays out. Like I said, we could, of course, both be wrong.
Absolutely.
You never know. That's the beauty of March.
Knowing our luck, it'll just somehow be a 12-13 matchup.
Or Northern Kentucky will beat Houston, and everyone will be upset.
Could you imagine?
No, I can't. I cannot imagine. But Iowa State, in the 6-11 matchup, they'll take on either Mississippi State or Pitt. This is another trendy upset. I've seen a lot of people saying if Pitt does beat Mississippi State, a lot of people like them to beat Iowa State. It'll be interesting to see because even ESPN's BPI doesn't even have Pitt favored to win that game.
Yeah, and this is kind of a head-scratcher. I do like Pitt in the first 4 game. I think Mississippi State's kind of just – they've been on borrowed time since about midway through the season where they just have been really lackluster. Pitt's been on a little bit more of an upswing. That being said, though, of the 6-11 games, right, and the first 4 games specifically, I will agree with the population in thinking that of any of those teams that could win a game in the first round, Pitt's probably got the best chance, but I don't think it's going to happen. You know, last year, and I talked about this with you, you heard me go through it last year, I was beating the drum that Iowa State had a good enough draw to get to the Sweet 16 as a 6 seed. Everybody's like, you're crazy. It's not happening. You know what? I find them right back in the same spot this year. I like their chances to maybe sneak into the Sweet 16 again. Give me them in this matchup with Pitt.
There you go. And I agree with you. Last year, I was the exact opposite. I said this is an Iowa State team that is going to get beat up immediately, and they'll be done. And sure enough, they just kept finding ways to win. It became the running joke on our show where Connor and I would go at it about this is the end of Iowa State, and then they just turn around and win again the next game.
It's something about that defensive system, right? We talked about, at least for me, most of the time I like better offense as opposed to good defense, at least in these first couple rounds. But for Iowa State, they've got something that works when you get into the tournament. They're not always the most athletic team. They're not always the most talented team. But that defensive system they implement really, for whatever reason, kind of makes other teams stumble. So it's something that I guess just not a lot of teams, see for whatever reason.
And that puts us in our next game. Xavier taking on Kennesaw State, and congratulations to the Owls.
Yeah.
Kennesaw State's made it for the first time ever. 20 years ago, they were a D2 school, Tyler.
Yeah, and that's...
And 4 years ago, they won 1 game. They were 1-28, and now they're here.
I mean, and that's incredible. That's a credit to the school, and, it's always one of those stories you hope there's more to it, right? Hopefully this isn't a flash in the pan for them. But they're not getting past Xavier. I mean, this is a pretty easy call here. Fun story for Kennesaw State. Xavier, to me, may be a touch overrated as a 3 seed, but still going to have plenty of the tank to take down Kennesaw State.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The Musketeers, which, by the way, fun name matchup, Musketeers versus Owls. How can you not like that? I think Xavier's able to get a win there. And that brings us to a 7-10 game between 2 teams that I really don't think should be in this 7-10 matchup.
Right.
Texas A&M and Penn State.
Well, and I think Texas A&M especially, right, should not be as a 25-win SEC team. There's no way they should be a 7 seed. Quite honestly, I would have probably put them ahead of Kentucky in my personal rankings, and Kentucky got a 6 seed. Penn State got a raw deal on this. I think if they get any other team, they are an interesting 10 seed. But Texas A&M's been rolling. They look like one of the better teams in the SEC down the stretch, other than Alabama. And I said Tennessee. Good God, Texas A&M. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
There you go. The Aggies.
The Aggies. Give me the Aggies in this one. They'll take it over Penn State. Just a little bit too much for the Nittany Lions to deal with.
And that's what I like about this game. These are two hot teams coming down the stretch. Penn State had a great run in the Big Ten tourney. Texas A&M getting all the way to the SEC title game as well. At the end of the day, though, I think A&M probably should have been at least a 6, maybe a 5, maybe even a 4 if things would have went the right way. But this is an A&M team that, yes, they're judged overall on their body of work, but if you take February and March A&M and compare them to November, December A&M,
whole different
two completely different teams, I think Texas A&M rolls in this one.
And if you're a program, that's what you want to do, right? You want to be able to look back and say, okay, we are vastly improved from where we are at the start of the season. And the metrics love Texas A&M. I mean, they absolutely show them as a very well-rounded team.
That brings us to the 2:15, Texas and Colgate. Colgate's a team that we've talked about them before, and you've probably heard about them before. Not just toothpaste brand, Tyler. This is a Colgate
they named
team.
it after the toothpaste guy.
They did. But at the same time, this is a Colgate team that is fast. They love to score. They're a great, phenomenal team to watch. Just a sad shame they're 15 seed having to go up against Texas.
Yeah, rest in peace, Texas. You want to talk about teams on fire? I mean, my God, they absolutely torched the Big 12 tournament, made a huge statement, not only waxing Kansas right before the Big 12 tournament, but did it again to them in the final. I like Texas's chance to go far and definitely taking this matchup over Colgate.
All I'm going to say about Texas is a moment that is not Rodney Terry being immediately cited as the head coach is a moment wasted.
Absolutely.
If you're Chris Del Conte,
yep.
As an OU fan, I hate to say it, but he's the guy.
He is.
He is the guy
He's
for
shown
them.
that in this back half of the season, rided them through a lot of adversity. We talked about with Bama in the previous video about dealing with their baggage and how it wasn't handled properly. Well, Texas did the opposite. They handled it the right way. They fought through it, and clearly they're a better team for it. It seems like they're more together now.
And that moves us to the second round matchups here, looking at it. Houston playing Iowa in your bracket, playing Auburn in mine. And Tyler, when Houston plays Iowa, what happens there? I think we have the same result here in what ends up happening, but
it's another situation where, again, even if Sasser's out for Houston, if for some reason he's not available, Houston's still got enough talent to win this game. I mean, doesn't matter if it's Iowa or Auburn. Those two teams have too many flaws. Houston's going to be too deep. They'll move on to the Sweet 16 here.
And that's where I'm at. I think Houston takes care of business against Auburn no matter what happens there. And that puts us in another interesting situation. You have Miami playing Indiana. I have Indiana taking on Drake. So
I'm interested to see where you go first in this.
Okay, so you want me to go first on this one? I think Drake, once again, will provide a tough game, but at the end of the day, Indiana slowly pulls away, and it sets up an Indiana-Houston matchup in the Sweet 16. I like Drake to hang around the entire game. I think they can cause problems for Indiana. They're a well-rounded team. You mentioned the offense is lacking at times, and I agree, but Drake is just a solid, tough, physical team. They're what a 12 seed's supposed to be, and we see a lot of those 12 seeds this year.
Definitely, and despite the different opponent, I still have the same result. I got Indiana moving on. I think they're able to solve some of Miami's explosiveness. And as you highlighted in the Drake-Miami matchup, Miami does struggle a little bit defensively. And I think that comes to bite them against what has been a Indiana team seemingly on the upswing, starting to get a little bit of that mojo going, and maybe start to feel themselves a bit with a big win here, in my case, over Miami.
So we end up with the same matchup, though, of Houston playing Indiana. Looking at Iowa State and Xavier, I know you mentioned Iowa State. You have the same confidence with them as you did last year. And I do, too, surprisingly. This is the year I think Iowa State, if they're going to make a run, sorry, Cyclones, now that I'm predicting it, they will, of course, get
Just
beat
burned,
somehow.
yeah, just
yeah.
get destroyed.
But I agree. I think
Let's
Iowa
go.
State beats Xavier this year.
One, I think it just goes to Xavier being a little overrated. I think Xavier was good, but they weren't great. And Iowa State, for whatever reason, in these big moments against those type of teams that are good fundamentally, but maybe don't have the top end talent, they win those matchups for whatever reason. I think this is another scenario that Iowa State gets that Sweet 16, potentially sets up a rematch with Texas.
You want to know something, Tyler? I think we get that rematch.
Oh, we do. I agree.
I think
agree.
we get Iowa State, Texas again. But I just want to say, Texas A&M versus Texas
Will be a heck
in
of
a second
ball game.
round.
Man, that's gonna be a great ball.
You want to talk about, rivalry renewed and all that. That will be a fun game. Buzz Williams has done a tremendous job down in Aggie land, but they're just not there yet.
Yeah,
they're getting there.
They're getting there.
They're getting there pretty fast, but they're
you're right.
not there yet.
Texas is just too deep, and Texas has a sneaky number of seniors on it too, leading the way, and I think that's what does in Texas A&M ultimately.
And then that moves us up to Houston, Indiana in the Sweet 16. And Tyler, you're giving me that silly face there. You're giving me the look of I'm about to
Because
maybe call it upset.
Yeah, you know what I told you before the show.
Yes.
I have 0 1 seeds making the Final Four.
Yes.
So that means that, yes, I have Indiana getting by Houston. I think we saw the chink in Houston's armor. If Sasser is not 100%, even if he's back, I think Indiana beats up Houston physically. I mentioned Tracy Jackson Davis. I think he is the X factor for Indiana in their entire run and propels them to a huge tournament. And things are going to be looking up for the Hoosiers after this one.
I agree with your sentiment. I
But
agree
you
that
don't agree with the
Indiana.
opinion.
I agree Indiana will give Houston fits. I think Houston wins it late and holds on one of those cheat death kind of moments there where they get pinned and somehow crawl their way back out of it. Maybe hit a late three or something like that to cut it to a 1-point game. Maybe get a crazy steal and win a game that they probably shouldn't win. But by the power of March, they get away to get it done, and it sets up Houston going to the Elite Eight.
And I can respect that. I think that would be a very fun matchup, providing everybody's healthy once you get there to the Sweet 16.
And then with Texas and Iowa State, a Big 12, just all-around Big 12 fest here in the Midwest Regional. Iowa State, Texas going at it again. Can Iowa State keep that run going?
So they are 1-1. The series is 1-1 on the season. Iowa State got the better of Texas the first time. Texas answered back in a big way the second time. And I think Texas uses those lessons they learned in that win to, again, pretty much dominate Iowa State here, punch their ticket to the Elite Eight and a chance maybe for a Final Four.
And that's what I think. I think Texas gets the win over Iowa State there. I think they get a resounding, it might be like the Kansas games we've seen, where it's a close game for a half, and then Texas just tears them apart in the second half to roll to the Elite Eight. And then we get Houston and Texas battling to go to Houston, Texas.
Texas will have to face 2 Texas teams on their way.
Yeah.
That'd be something.
It would be, for sure. But that brings us to the Elite Eight game. You have Indiana, Texas. I have Houston and Texas.
I wonder if we'll have the same result.
We might have
though.
the same result because I have Texas beating Houston. I think that the Horns are able to get the win here. I think Houston's injury problems catch up to him, not fully 100%. They get the win over Indiana barely, and then they have to turn around and play a Texas team that is just murdering people at this point. I think Texas does it again. They get another resounding win and make their way to the Final Four.
And, Cade, I agree. Whether it's Houston or Indiana, I think Texas has the experience, the bodies, the depth. They'll start feeling really good about their chances heading into the Final Four there. And, maybe they feel this is the year because they're going to pick up a couple big wins on their way through that bracket.
Well, there you have it. From the first round to the Final Four, that is the Midwest Regional, folks. As always, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Tell us, did we do a good job? Are we smart? Are we dumb? Who knows? Only the bracket knows, folks, but we'll have to see here in a few days. As always, we sincerely appreciate any support we get, and have a good one, everybody, and have fun building brackets.